I'm Bill Doherty, and I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. Bill's Bullpen is a program that's intended to give you some sense of what's going on both regionally and locally. And today I have with me Lena. Kate, your title is kind of a mouthful, so why don't you tell the viewers what it is?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So my title is Substance Use Prevention Program Manager, and I work for Barnstable County Human Services.
Well, Barnstable County is close to my heart, as some of you know. Having been an employee of Barnstable County by virtue of them trusting me to be a county commissioner. Now, tell me a little bit about who you are. Where did you go to school?
Sure. So I went to University of Vermont for undergrad and studied
UVM.
social work.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Yeah, just a little while ago. And then got a master's degree in public health from Northeastern University. And so I kind of combined the social work with the public health and found my way into the addiction services field, and have held a variety of titles throughout the years. I've worked in the field for about 12 years now. I worked for the City of Boston, for the Boston Public Health Commission, and learned a lot about what it means to work with people who are actively using substances. And that's where I really found my passion for this work. And then from there, went and worked for the State Department of Public Health and worked on the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services overdose prevention team that managed all the overdose prevention work throughout the state. And then was ready to get back to kind of more local and on the ground. That's when I moved to the Cape and worked for AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod. I was there for about 2 years managing the prevention work there. So again, working with people who are actively using and people living with HIV, and learned a lot about the way things work on the Cape, very different from the city of Boston.
Really?
Just a tiny bit. But there was, definitely a learning curve and, understanding how public health works differently in a city versus a more rural area, which, is obvious, but there's also, a lot to learn there. And then that brought me to Barnstable County Human Services.
Okay. In the 15 towns that are on Cape Cod, Barnstable, the city of Barnstable, which likes to refer to itself as a town because it wants to get the tourist dollars, has put us on notice from time to time that since they're where you go for all of the services, they tend to get overloaded in terms of, in terms of supplying the infrastructure that's part of that. In your job as working for the county, how do you spread that out? So it goes, so the other 14 towns are participating and drawn into supporting your program?
That's essentially my job, is to make
sure. Okay.
Yeah, you got it right there. My job is to make sure that all of the towns, all of the school districts, all of the nonprofits and agencies, throughout the entire Cape, so not just focused on Mid-Cape, but really everywhere, is connected, is aware of what each other are doing, and has all the resources, trainings, technical assistance that they might need to really serve their towns on their own. Because I think each town is very different, but you can also kind of cluster the towns into regions. And so making sure that towns are able to work together and communicating, I think, is one of the most important things.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I do recall that every town has a mantra about things are different here in, fill in the blanks. But in doing that, how are you communicating with the school districts, for example?
Sure. So I should put the caveat out there that I've only been in this job for 2 months. But so how I've approached the beginning of my job and trying to orient myself to the work is to meet with as many people and agencies as possible. So I feel like in order to really be able to do service to the residents and the providers of the county, I need to know what's going on. Most importantly, I need to be a good listener, go to where people are. So go to the different work groups that the schools are involved in, go directly to the schools themselves, to the town substance use coalitions, and really just absorb as much as I can,
Mhm.
and ask the question, what do you all need from the county? How can I be of service to
Mhm.
you? And then try and implement that.
Well, one of the things you said in the beginning was that you had worked with users. And to me, many of the programs that, that I've heard about, spend a lot of time talking about, let's say, how they're going to approach, but don't really involve let's say let's say the people who are involved, who are substance abusers. How are you involving them in, let's say, in participating in their rehabilitation?
Sure. So one thing that's on one of the many things on my job description is running the Regional Substance Awareness Coalition, which is the RSAC group. So this is a coalition that brings together providers, community members, people with lived experience from all over the county. Bring everyone together every other month. Used to be once a month, but
Mhm.
COVID changed everything for all of us. And to work together to implement action plans and action items to really address the issue of substance use on the Cape. So one of the things I'd like to do is go through that member list, look at, who do we have at the table,
Mhm.
and I think more importantly, who is not at the table.
Mhm.
So I know we've got folks who are in recovery, we've got folks working in the field, and I think, if it comes out that there's no one who is actively using, I think that is a voice that's missing. And even though I've worked in the field with people, that voice should not come through me. That should be, someone who's really living it.
We had, I believe there was one wet shelter that was, I think it was on Camp Street in Hyannis, and I don't know if it's still there, and I don't know whether or not there's, let's say, been any developments or conversations about having more of them. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, St. Joseph's is the shelter in Hyannis. They're really, really great. I used to work with them when I worked at Aid Support Group, and
Mhm.
they are really on top of making sure they have all the services that people need. So
Mhm.
they would bring in regular trainers and people to run groups for folks. So individuals staying there have a chance to, get their
Mhm.
needs met, learn something new potentially, or something life-saving. I haven't heard about any plans to expand and have other shelters,
Mhm.
but I think it's really tough for somewhere that is so geographically massive to have just one shelter. So
Yeah,
I think there
506
should be.
Gee, 545 square miles of Cape Cod, and Hyannis is maybe about 10 square miles, and that's it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
I think we need more.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to dwell on that a little bit more because where they have programs like 12-step and, and Narcan, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and the police are now carrying Narcan. And I have some thoughts about that, and I'd like to, talk a little bit about it,
Sure.
later on. But it seems to me that one of the things that's difficult is getting over what I'd call the inertia of involvement. It took a long time, let's say, for somebody to get engaged and involved with substance, and the expectation that you can turn it off immediately might be available to some, but it doesn't speak to what I'd call an understanding of the idea that addiction is a disease like many others. So my question to you is, how are you getting that message across to people that it's not just, well, get yourself in hand and you'll be able to solve all your problems, but getting across that it is a disease, and what are some of the, let's say, some of the ways that you could develop a process to, let's say, to get better and to, let's say, to recover yourself?
Yeah, I think you put that really beautifully. I think addiction, we know addiction is a disease. And I think one way is continuing to do trainings, educational campaigns, making sure that all of the providers who are working in the field, understand that point, and then making sure that the community members too. One of the jobs that I have currently is to provide educational opportunities for not just providers, but also for community members. And so that could include, overdose prevention, overdose response trainings on addiction. And I have this one slide in a PowerPoint that I have in my head that popped up as you were talking. And really, addiction is so different for every individual person. And I think that is kind of where we need to start in order to really understand how to help each individual, get to a point of recovery. Also understanding that the definition of recovery is going to be different for me than it would be for you, because we are different people.
Gosh, Kate, you mean you have to know your subject before you can really help them?
You
I have to
do.
write this down. This is absolutely new information. Well, but seriously, one
Yeah.
of the things that, the folks that watch a program like this would be interested in is if they have somebody that is significant in their life, whether it be a friend or a family member, and they want to be helpful, the educational opportunity is very important so that they could understand what specifically their role is. We have a lot of what I'd call fad things like tough love and things of that sort, but it does leave out the piece. Do we really know our subject well enough, let's say to support them in a useful way, rather than providing what I'd call peanut butter and jelly on the bread of life. If the bread
Yeah.
doesn't want to, if the bread isn't made right, you have to get back to that. Which brings back the idea in philosophy about you cannot argue with process. You can only argue with premise. And if your first premise is wrong, your process can be logical
Yeah.
and rational, but you'll not
Exactly.
accomplish your objective.
Well, and I think one of the most important things for family members to know, and people working in the field, for police to understand, anyone that can kind of get a sense of burnout from working in this field of addiction, is that people, for the most part, when someone is in kind of the throes of active addiction, there are some people who would like to keep using. There's a lot of people who cannot stop, and who, thinking about going through the process of stopping, having to admit to potentially someone they love, and are concerned about shame or guilt that they're actively using, is really tough. On top of that, going through withdrawal, feeling so sick is scary. And then having to go through the kind of wild treatment system that we have in our state and country and locally is really, really daunting, because there are not enough beds, and what you have to go through in order to get to the point of trying to get, a detox bed, a residential treatment bed, or even to get medication for opioid use disorder, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. And even someone that's worked in the field for a really long time and understands the whole system, I still would have trouble getting someone the help that they need, because our system just has some flaws with it.
Well, one of the biggest flaws, in my opinion, is that we only give lip service to the fact that treatment is a lot more expensive than prevention, and for some reason or other, it doesn't seem to make a connection. Hopefully, with the program you have, are you addressing that part of it?
Yeah, so that's definitely a big part of it. So I would say my focus is prevention on all levels. So definitely primary prevention, making sure that parents and schools have the information they need to be able to, postpone or completely cut off the possibility of youth using substances, and working with a lot of the different coalitions in the area. That's something that, even Bourne Substance Free Coalition is working on. They've got speakers coming in, I think just next week, talking about alcohol use and decision-making. They've got a sticker shock campaign coming up where they'll put stickers with information on liquor bottles at liquor stores. So even, right here in Bourne, there's a lot going on with prevention. And within the RSAC group, we have 4 different working groups, and one of them is prevention. So in my role, we've got our first meeting coming up in a few weeks. So we'll kind of think about what, the next action steps will be. But I think prevention is really, really important not only, preventing that youth from using that first time, but also understanding what's happening within the entire family. And if there's a parent or an aunt or uncle, a grandparent, someone older within the family who is actively using or has used in the past, trying to disrupt that cycle. So I think there's a couple different kind of layers of prevention within primary prevention and making sure the entire family has the supports that they need.
Well, one of the, I have a recollection that many years ago, Norfolk County had a program of what they call pre-trial probation, where if someone who was arrested for, a kid was arrested, if the family would agree to go into counseling, they would not bring the case forward. And I thought that was a very progressive program. And I don't know if it's still being followed. That was more than, my God, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's this issue we're talking about is not a new one. There is another issue, though. There are a lot of folks who are mentally ill who are what I'd call self-medicating. Are you dealing with any dual diagnosed folks in this program?
Of course, yeah. I think that dual diagnosis is very prevalent. And oftentimes, I think oftentimes when people are using a substance, there is a reason behind it. So there's something that is trying to be filled. Maybe there is an undiagnosed mental condition that, a Xanax or a drink is filling. There might be a safer way to address that with, a prescription or counseling or, an inpatient stay or whatever. It might be different for everyone, but I think mental health and substance use do go hand in hand a lot of the time. And I think that's one thing that I am really aware of is a lot of times the work that we do end up being in these silos when really we need to be working hand in hand.
And speaking of silos, Jim Cummings, has a very strong program out, at the jail because of the combination of folks that are dual diagnosed, as well as, let's say, just I think we talked about between 80 and 85% of the folks that that are his residents are related to some type of substance abuse, and his point is that these folks are coming back into the community. There is an opinion, and perhaps you could comment on it, that since the police are now equipped and are carrying Narcan, that people are being more cavalier about usage. What effect, in your opinion, is that having?
Yeah, there's been a lot of research on Narcan, and especially community distribution of Narcan being more available, and all of the research has shown that people who are going to be using opioids are going to use opioids. The presence of Narcan may make people feel safer, but will not change the amount they're using, how often they use. It doesn't actually have an impact. So I think the evidence and the research shows that we want everyone to be carrying Narcan. As many people who can be trained in how to use it, how to respond to an overdose, how to identify what an overdose looks like, everyone and anyone should carry Narcan.
As a public service, describe to people about those steps that they should be watching.
Of overdose, what an overdose looks like?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, using your eyes and your ears are kind of the biggest thing. When someone is in an opioid overdose, the respiratory system is the first thing that's impacted. So one of the things that you can see is you'll see someone's color start to drain from their face. You can actually see the color in their face. You'll see it in their fingertips and their lips, kind of the first place that you'll start to see some blue or gray or purple. And because the body is struggling to get enough oxygen in, you might hear someone kind of making like a snoring noise. This at least tells you that the person is having some kind of medical emergency. They're not getting enough oxygen into their body. There may be something around them that tells you that they were recently using. There might be a syringe, there might be a bag or a pill bottle or something that gives you a sign that there could be some opioids on board. And really, once you determine that, I recommend shaking people, yelling their name if you know them. We always recommend doing the sternal rub.
What?
So the sternal rub, you make a fist with your hand, you find that hard sternal bone right in the middle of your chest, and you rub hard and fast right there. So the idea behind this is you're trying to cut through the opioids that might be on board, cause enough pain to wake someone up, but not enough pain that you're doing damage.
Okay.
If someone doesn't respond to it, because it really hurts. Even
Yeah, it sounds
even me
painful.
doing it on myself, and I'm not putting any weight
Yeah.
behind, I can feel it. So if someone doesn't respond to that, there's some kind of emergency going on. So that at that point, we would recommend, grabbing Narcan if you have it, calling 911, and if you're trained in CPR, administering CPR.
At a lower level, how can you tell if someone you're close to is beginning to, let's say, to be affected by opioids? I know that when I have a couple of drinks, I'm much just a different person, than I am now. But and that tends to have a fairly short life because I suffer for it late, afterwards. More as I've gotten older, by the way. And I'm sure a lot of fellows my age will tell you the same thing.
Sure.
But when someone is in the, let's say, the beginning stages of involvement to addiction, what should we look for in behavioral change to determine whether or not it's not just being cranky, but just something else that's happening?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I can take it back one step,
Go
and then
ahead.
I will answer your question. I think one thing that parents can do to make sure that they are aware if something's changing with their youth, their kids, is making sure there's open dialogue. So talking to your kids regularly, sitting down a couple times a day and asking them about their day, being present in their life. So even having, the two of you in the same room together, just being very aware of what's going on in your kid's life. Who are their friends? Where do they typically hang out? Just being aware of what their kind of baseline looks like. So then if something seems a little different, then, you'll be ready to pinpoint it. That something's going on at least. I think, a change in kind of personality and energy level, not being as present. So potentially if someone's, in their room more, if they're not home as much. When someone is actively high, they look super sleepy, body gets really relaxed. It could be like you're kind of nodding a little bit. So those are the more obvious signs, but I think noticing where someone's hanging out, if they're not around as much, there might be something going on.
Well, I know that older folks are concerned about, nodding off a lot. But I've also noticed that if you get on speed or something like that, and all of a sudden, everybody's kind of active, which doesn't last very long, by the way. But that's another thing. So, in other words, if you're noticing any significant change in behavior, and that's sort of a warning sign. At the same time, I guess the next step, to think about is how do you talk to someone? How do you broach the subject of what somebody's doing without them giving you, mind your own, playing down my business?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you begin that conversation?
I think that's a great question. I think open-ended questions are really important. So giving someone the opportunity to volunteer information is always best. If that doesn't work and they're like, no, I'm fine, move on with your life. I think just letting people know I'm here for you. It seems like something might be going on. I kind of noticed that you seem a little different than normal. I want you to know that whatever is happening in your life right now, I'm going to be here for you. I love you. I will, help you get through whatever's going on. I think if you have a suspicion that opioids might be something that is involved in that person's life, even outwardly saying, I don't know if this is helpful to you, but just so you know, I do have Narcan in my bag or I keep it in my drawer. You know, I think letting people know that you're there is one of the most important things.
Well, you mentioned something in that in that description that I don't think we say enough. I don't think we tell people that we care about, that we do love them enough.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever wear that out. And I know that I've always appreciated it when, when members of my family tell me that, even when it's just sort of, love you, bye. But it's important to hear that. And I've heard when I've been involved with, when talks about suicide prevention, well, people say, if only anyone had just said hello, or just noticed me, or saw that I was visible. I was at a play Sunday, and at Emerson College, and one of the things that the playwright was trying to get across was, are we visible to each other? And I think that, sort of a key thing. Now, believe it or not, we're almost at the end of all of this. So the question I would have for you is that, what are the takeaways that you would want folks to have from the county's point of view with regard to the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways for people to at least know what's going on with the county. So we have a monthly newsletter that comes out that I manage with some of the other staff at the county.
How do you get that newsletter?
You go onto the Barnstable County's website, the Human Services website, find the tab that says RSAC, Regional Substance Abuse Coalition, and you'll find the later newsletters, and there'll be a place to sign up as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely that has information on local, state, and national resources, local events that are going on, new organizations that are popping up, highlights from the different towns. So I think that's a really good way to find out what's going on. The RSAC meetings they're open to the public.
When is the next one?
Today.
Today.
Can you believe it?
Okay,
So
well,
today at 3:30 via
You have regular meetings?
virtual. They are, yeah, every other month.
Every other month, and are they virtual?
They are virtual, so you can find that information posted on the website as well.
They're
We've got the agenda.
barnstablecounty.org, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I remember that much, yeah.
Yeah, and
All
I
right.
guess just kind of really briefly to tie it all together. So the four, I think, topics that we focus on are harm reduction, recovery, treatment, and prevention.
Okay.
So I'll be working on all four of those things,
Mm-hmm.
in a variety of capacities. But I think the most important thing for people to hear from me is that, in this new role, my job is to support the residents and the providers of Barnstable County, however, that might be. So I've gotten calls directly from community members who are looking for resources to help.
And how would they call you?
Oh shoot, you're testing my knowledge
No,
of
no,
my
we'll put it.
phone number, but yeah, you can
Just
give
call
me.
Barnstable County.
You can call Barnstable County.
Yeah.
Also, you can call my direct number. I'll make sure that it's on the website, as well as my email address should be on there. But my email is kate.lena@barnstablecounty.org.
And with that, Kate, I want to thank you for coming. Okay, and I want to thank the viewers for spending time with us to find out a little bit more about what's going on with Barnstable County and trying to make the quality of your life better, and also help the people you care about. So with that, I want to again, I'm Bill Doherty. This has been Bill's Bullpen, a production of Bourne TV.